This is going to be our ninth episode. This is OK&Y podcast. I'm Yichin, and I'm joined here by our usual guest, Oliver.
Guest.
Guest. Yeah, and I say that, but you're the one who's mostly uploading all the videos.
Yep.
Oliver, and then Kenny.
Who actually feels like a guest because I'm not here all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna we haven't done this in a while, but we thought we'd get together and talk about Everfest. I think you guys have some very strong opinions about Everfest. I think they're mostly positive, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Spoiler alert. Yeah, well, I'm usually the curmudgeon, right? Like in the last two sets, I feel like we've gone from Monarch and Tails, and I've been like, everything sucks and everything's awful. Yeah, Everfest overall, I said, feels like a return to form in the sense where I look at all the cards in the set, and everything feels like flesh and blood again to me. And it hasn't felt like that for two sets now. So, overarching opinions of it are positive. Doesn't mean all the cards are good, but it feels more like set 1, 2, and 3 did, rather than 4 and 5, which just felt like, divergent parallel universes or something like that. The dark timeline, even.
Yeah, totally. I'm pretty positive on most sets, I feel like. So obviously, me being positive on this set is probably not a surprise. I am a little, I want to say disappointed, because I'm not disappointed with the set, but I do wish there were some more of certain themes prevalent. But overall, I think I'm pretty satisfied with the set. I am mostly actually impressed with how well they've managed to push certain archetypes without making them feel that they overlap too much within their card pool, and without feeling like they're overall raising the power level of each class. So maybe I'm going around a little bit more to your anti-talent thinking. I know Oliver is very anti-talent.
Talents were a mistake.
Yeah, join the cult, right? So, I mean, that's actually exactly what I was talking about. So I spoke with Oliver the other day about this, where, in one of the biggest victories in this set, as you were just saying, Yichin, is that they've managed to make it so that each class feels like it's got divergent paths, and we'll talk about that as we go through each of the classes, without needing to arbitrarily gate it, right? So it's not like these are, luck brute or anything like that. It's just brute. But it's pretty clear that there might be some cards that get used in multiple different brute decks. But the key thing is that it's still open, right? There's clearly paths that you can go down, but there might be cards here and there that, you might be able to dabble into. And it doesn't nothing feels totally wild, right? So, yeah, what this set is and what they've done in classes is what I wanted for the card pool from the get-go. That's why I was so disappointed with talents. But this feels like, as I said, return to form. Very happy.
Yeah, and I do have some response to that, but actually I want to go into the cards ahead of time before we do that, because there are some specific archetypes where I feel like they might have been pushing the limit a bit too much on might overall increase the power level of the class side of things.
Sure.
But yeah, let's go ahead and we can get started on the class by class analysis, unless you want to add something, Oliver?
No, not really. I'm pretty positive about the set overall. Monarch and Tails obviously had their issues, and they've addressed it with their bans and everything, but yeah, Crucible of War is probably like my favorite set. Yeah, this is probably going to be a runner-up based on what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and coming from the perspective of somebody who didn't like Crucible of War, I'm relatively pleased with LSS here, even though I feel like it might be a bit of, I've accepted that Crucible of War is the standard going forward, and I'm basing my opinions off of that.
For me, what I was going to say was, I feel like one of the biggest things about this set is they didn't print another Runeblade. That's why the set's all, that's why it's all fine, right? We don't have another Runeblade in the talents. That's a joke, of course. I don't really care, but it just seemed to be a common thing for the past two sets was, wow, Runeblade's pretty good. Yeah, and Runeblade went and won Australian Nationals as well.
That's true. That's true. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about Brute, because I feel like that's going to be, it's the first one on our list, but also I think it's the most controversial one, because a lot of people were hoping for a lot of Brute cards that were on the stronger side and were more universally applicable. And I feel like a lot of people, at least on initial reads, might be a bit disappointed that they lean so heavily into a dice rolling theme for Brute. So actually, overall, I think the cards are... Okay, we have like three or four different cards that are dice rolling mechanics. That's Skull Crushers, Rolling Thunder, High Roller, and I believe the other one was Bad Beats. and all of those kind of lean into rolling a 6-sided die, which is sort of KO's theme. And I guess this is more of them supporting the Blitz heroes, but a lot of people were very disappointed that Levia and Reinhardt didn't get anything super amazing, even though I think that Wild Ride and maybe big Swing Big, or what was it, Wild Swing?
No, Swing Big.
Swing Big is one of those cards that will be universally used and probably be a lot stronger than it looks.
That's that sentiment, right? The Reinhardt players or Levia players didn't get anything in this set. That's exactly what I was going on about with all the talents, right? Like when Levia got Reinhardt basically got nothing, right? So at least I guess with these cards, even though they are pushed towards certain themes, like these cards are undoubtedly more within Kaio's purview, right? They're very much more along that side. But Reinhardt could still use some of them, one or two of them, if it ended up being appropriate, right? Like they might be strong enough or they might be interesting enough that they make the cut. But that being said, like I can appreciate, not getting new toys and everything. That's totally understandable. Like there's nothing that directly fits into the Reinhardt theme as strongly. Like, I mean, what is it? The Wild Ride and Bare Fangs are kind of in that discard random theme.
Yeah.
But even so, I guess the key thing is that if Reinhardt wanted to play High Roller, as an example, even though it may not be ideal for him, he can, right? Same deal with like Rolling Thunder, as an example.
Yeah, definitely. I think I know people are definitely going to try and test it out, especially High Roller, which has a very high upside for its potential downside. So yeah, I feel like for all the Brute cards, there's a general bent towards aggro that people didn't really want Brute to go to. They didn't just want Brute to be another ARG Smash class, even though it kind of already is. I think they wanted to see something that was less geared towards aggro and more geared towards mid range, because I feel like as a whole, the player base is a little sick of aggro.
Well, so that's a tricky thing, right? Because definitely the classes have their clear flavors.
Yeah.
And Brute, I guess the Magic Brute does make sense as an aggro archetype, right? I'm not saying it just has to be like that all the time. But I can see that if they wanted to shift more towards like a mid-range or controller charge, it probably need more than a few tools to shift that way. Perhaps in the longer term, some cards will come out here and there that will allow Brute to shift towards more of a control-y archetype. But I'm not sad about having a different, even if the end result is still similar in the sense that it's a fairly aggro deck, right? I mean, I'd say that the Kaio rolling dice thing seems even more aggro.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like it's very much all in compared to Reinhardt, or compared to typical Brute. Yeah, as I said, I'm happy to see more archetypes. It may not be the archetype that people want, but I'm just happy to see more archetypes, popping up. Basically,
definitely. One thing I actually will notice that you'll see a trend of later on is that, in addition to supporting like all the one or two archetypes that they're pushing in the set per class, one Majestic is almost always geared towards existing archetypes. And so that's going to be what Swing Big is, where it very clearly is one of those mid-range cards that's meant to help take back tempo. And I think that LSS is trying to support general broad themes with these Majestics in an effort to make sure that, even people who might not enjoy a certain play style of the class will be able to want something in the set.
Absolutely. I think probably one of my favorite things about Brute overall, honestly, and even just LSS card designs generally, is sometimes, well, sorry, not generally, I should say, specific examples of this. And Swing Big, I think, is one of them. But the flavor of Swing Big is so strong. Like, mechanically, it might be it's going to be a pretty solid card, I think, because it's basically Wreck-A-Romp without the discard.
Yeah.
Right? It's just two for 8. The fact that it's got this kind of cool downside where, if you swing and you miss, you've got to recover and your opponent's faster. That's cool. Like, I enjoy the flavor hit on it. The fact it's a reasonable card too is just gravy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they did well. It's similar with I can't remember, like Hit with Big Stump or whatever it's called. I don't remember the exact.
Smash with Big Tree. Yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
Smash with Tree. Yeah, exactly. It's just playing into that. I'm just like a lumbering brute, and I'm going to hit you with stuff. It's cool. Like it really evokes that flavor.
I will note from your earlier point of Monarch and Tails not supporting other classes. They technically did. I know the majority of the set was geared towards towards the new heroes, but I feel like that their concession with making these non-talented cards for Brute was definitely going to be it's definitely there to make sure that people who aren't interested in Levia but are interested in Reiner are still going to buy into the supplemental sets. I don't think their design of core sets will change significantly going forward, but maybe they'll have maybe a couple extra slots in their space devoted towards non-talented cards.
Sure. I think the trickiest thing for me, right, is let's think about it in terms of Kaio, Reiner, Levia, right? Mm-hmm. The thing with Reiner and Kaio is that whenever you print a Brute card, it goes towards their general accessible pool, and Levia's as well, right? Levia can access it in the same way. The thing is that Levia as well is so built towards that specific archetype. Like, you cannot ignore the fact that she has to play most of the Shadow Brute cards, right? You need to banish stuff, or you're just going to bleed to death very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so as such, unless a card gets printed that actually is a Shadow Brute card, which then is completely unavailable by Reiner, she just won't get support, right? And whereas, these, as we talked about, these Kaio cards, or these Kaio-centric cards, could still be utilized by the others, and that's the thing. And unfortunately, I just can't see that being the case with Levia cards in the future, where if they print a card, it may as well say Levia Specialization, if that makes sense. I mean, some of these cards are close to that, if you know what I mean. Like, they almost say Kaio Specialization, but, I'm sure there'll be a couple of cards that filter through and are playable, across the board. And that's the part that I think is fun. I think it's totally fine to have archetypes within and have heroes that work towards those archetypes. Mm-hmm. But when you hard gating is where I drew the line and said it's problematic, right? Because it's almost like it's a different class. It may as well be a different class to a certain extent.
It's interesting that you mentioned Levia with her Shadow Breed cards, because I feel like in terms of competitive results, the best Levia decks are the ones who that completely ignore or mostly ignore Blood deck cards, only run a few, and just use efficient Brute and generic attacks coupled with Shadow Puppetry and like one or two other good Shadow cards. It's like, in addition to like having a more specialized ability, they also have access to a wider variety of cards, which definitely makes it a little hard to balance. I think definitely led to a lot of issues with Runeblade design as well.
I always pronounce so Levia, is that or Levia?
I think James calls it Levia. I call it Levia because I feel like it's more natural sounding. But it's supposed to be like Leviathan, right? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But Levia is how I would go to pronounce it as well.
Okay, we're gonna settle on Levia then. Okay, yeah.
It's gonna be Levia, yeah. But yeah, it is Levia, I guess, an example of that design being weird in a sense, right? Where, as you described, like, to follow the competitive as much. Because I was a bit sad after Monarch and Tails. Mm-hmm. But with Levia, as you were saying, best Levia decks are decks that just play generic Brute cards. So then the weird thing is that Levia's special ability is effectively that she just access this phantom pool of cards that no one else can access, right? Because clearly you're not trying to access Blood debt, really. You're just trying to access high-quality Shadow cards.
Yeah. In
that sense, right? And so, yeah, it doesn't rub me the right way. One could say it rubs me the wrong way, but yeah, I feel as though they could have just gone for a more, if they took Shadow off every single Brute card, right, they just made Levia's cards all available for all the Brutes. I don't think you'd have the same thing that's happening with Levia with the other Brutes, right? Mm-hmm. They have a couple of Levia's cards, but not all of them, and then they'd use some of their own specialized pool. But the fact of the matter is that they could still access everything, right? Yeah. Whereas Levia's just got this secret little pool of cards that no one else can use, and it's weird. I don't mind specializations, right? Like, if you have this one unique card that makes your character cool, fine, no problem, right? But if you've got this whole set of cards that no one else can ever use, it's just I stand by that it was bad design. I said it from day one. I stand by it now, and I think this set, as I said, is really just showing that this is so much better than the traits were. My 2 cents worth.
Okay, well, talking about heroes with massive card pools and nothing else going for them, let's move on to Guardian and Bravo.
Any thoughts, Oliver?
Towns were a mistake. But honestly, I think this Bravo actually has some potential. It's just going to take a lot of deck building to get right. Just get all the bounces of all all the ratios of the elements and everything, and it is pretty strong in my opinion, but also it didn't need to happen.
Do you think it's better than current Bravo?
I would hazard a guess yes. Go ahead, Kenny.
I feel like I don't know. I can't imagine Earth Ice because you need to reveal all three, right?
Yeah.
In order to get the big swing. I mean, how often is that realistically going to happen? I feel like the level of inconsistency in that deck will be huge, right? Because not only do you have to you've got to make the deck consistent enough that even when you're on off turns, you're still doing something interesting. So, I mean, I've harped on about talents enough, so I'm not going to really here. But just as far as hero design goes, I don't mind the hero itself in abstract. If you take away the fact that he uses talent cards, you could just say they were keywords of some other kind. It feels kind of like a Timmy card, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't feel like he's going to be better than other Bravo. Other Bravo is just more consistent. But, if you get your Haymaker turn, right, it's a feel-good wow moment. So I don't mind that. If you pull off revealing the Earth, Ice, Lightning, swing with a big crushing hit, and then swing with, that's a great turn, right? So, that part I'm excited about. I don't think he's going to be super competitive. I could be wrong, but yeah, I can't say it. I am, however, kind of glad that they printed a new version of an old hero. I like that those characters are still coming back and existing.
Yeah, you're gonna mention Alder?
So my friend has tested this Bravo a little bit. Actually, I have multiple friends who's tested it, but one that I've actually witnessed, he was able to get it off 3 times in one game, and every time he did it,
has very good draws.
Yeah. Every time he did it, it was super devastating. Like he even had a OK&Y. He had the trigger. He had OK&Y and then fused it, so it was 11 dominate, go again, discard 2, etc. So.
But that's a trade-off for having more inconsistent turns, right? You said you still beat him, right?
Oh no! I was watching him play against someone else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did he lose or win?
He won. Definitely won.
Okay, cool.
What about but you played him once, right? Or
Yeah, I played against his deck with my Prism deck. I still destroyed him because it's just Bravo things. I mean, he still has issues with the go again and everything. He's not running Zealous Beltings because of all the lightning cards he has to run, like Blink, Heaven's Claws. They're all not 6 or more power.
Yeah, all the ice cards aren't usually 6 or more power either. So
So it still has issues against Prism, in my opinion, even though it does have Blink and the extra action point generation. But from what I've seen, it performs really well, if not a little consistent, but still decent.
I think once people figure out on a standardized build, the main issue with Bravo, I feel like, is that once you figure out a build for him, it's going to take a lot to find upgrades that will reasonably slot into it without ruining some other part of his deck. So in that case, right, I feel like his power level might start off pretty low until people figure him out. It's going to be fairly strong, and then he's going to kind of taper off as everyone else gets more and more tools added to him, and he's not going to improve too much. I can't imagine that, even though you mentioned that he got it off 3 times in the game, I can't imagine that it's nearly consistent enough to warrant running over current Bravo and his current play patterns. I feel like if you're not consistent, right, Bravo is basically just a worse old him. Otherwise, it's might be good. I don't know.
I think one of the key things with Bravo or Guardian generally that doesn't exist at the moment, or at least in my eyes, is I feel like it's one play pattern, right? If you compare it to Brute, as an example, Brute, you've got your die roll. I mean, now you've got your die roll and your random discard. I mean, yeah, they're still punching you in the face, but they're doing it in very different ways. Whereas, in my eyes, both Oldhim and, I mean, Oldhim's more, totally, don't get me wrong, but it's very much, I'm going to hit you with a hammer, and then at some point, I'm going to hit you with a big attack. Right? That's kind of just Guardian's whole playthrough. Right? So whether big attacks are better than old attacks or not. And so it's not really a variant style of gameplay. What I was really hoping for was, you guys know Sledge of Anviline, whatever it's called, the 4 costs swing to 6, but it doesn't have once per turn. I was kind of hoping that Guardian might have some build eventually that made use of the fact that multiple the hammer, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Like I don't know what the long-term intention with that was. It just seems like, okay, well, if you have a turn where you've got go again and you've got 8 pitch and you have nothing better to you, you can swing twice with a hammer. Right?
I know. Well, I know people are trying that with Bravo Star of the Show because they're trying to use like blink and other lightning go again effects to get that second hammer swing. But I
Sure.
feel like those builds are more on the line of meme builds than anything. That's not to say Sledge of Evelheim is bad. There have been more and more decks recently that have been using Sledge of Evelheim instead of Enothos for various reasons. So I do think that it will. It's a card that can only appreciate in time, but it just goes to show how card evaluations and cards that we initially dismiss can change over time because eventually I assume eventually we're gonna have enough ways to give it go again that the double hammer swing per turn build might be viable. So
Hopefully.
yeah, who knows when that will happen? But it's an interesting thing to see shape up over time. So other cards that Bravo had released, we want to talk about Heave. It's a they said it's going to be on 4 cards, and while they're technically not lying, it's technically only on 2 cards because 3 of those cards are the same card except different pitch colors. So Heave is, I think,
They're technically correct.
yeah, Heave is, I think, a way for them to try and maybe not change up Bravo's playstyle, but give Guardians a viable alternative to hammering for 4 or 6 every turn. I'm not sure how well it'll work out in the end, but I do like that they're trying to encourage Guardians not to just go block, pitch, make a seismic surge, pitch, hammer you for 6 every single turn for the rest of creation.
Yeah, it's pretty. Unfortunately, that style of play. I mean, it's valid, right? As far as competitive stuff goes, don't get me wrong. Like, if it's good, do it. That's not interesting. But if you're just gonna if you're just gonna use Anathos all day, every day, it's like, okay, well, play these other 50 cards in your deck, right? If you're just gonna swing with Anathos every turn.
Mm-hmm. A couple of things I want to mention about Guardian cards. So we have this card called Imposing Visage, and I don't want to mention it because I think it's a cool card or has cool art, which I think it does. But I want to mention it because it has the ugliest cost I've ever seen on the card, which is X3. In other words, it means X plus 3, and it counts as a cost with cost 3 or greater. I feel like that's going to mess a lot of people up, and people are not going to understand it. And I really wish they would help adjust the UI for the casting costs because we have a double-digit casting cost and a numeral plus letter casting cost in the same set, and it's a little bit confusing for people to take in and just parse.
Yeah. It's the UI on it is pretty atrocious. I mean, I can see it and I can make it out, but it's not clean. It looks really odd.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, how come they couldn't just put X minus 3 in the card effect, so they just has the cost of X? Because in Sonata they have X plus 3 in the card effect, right?
I assume it's because it would create confusion as to, because anything negative in Fab, I believe, is supposed to just count as 0. So I think it might have created some confusion where it's like, well, -3 is technically 0, so I can search up these 0 cost auras.
I guess one other thing as well, Oliver, is it wouldn't count as a 3-cost card, so it wouldn't go with it wouldn't go with Guardian's whole jam, right?
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
I'm not saying that's a good reason, but it's just.
If anything, I think this should have been one of the first Guardian cards that costs 0 because just because I feel like it's one of those cards that feels a little dangerous to have because it's only going to get better. I say that with lots of cards, right? But I feel like this is only going to get better as you get more auras. Yeah, eventually it's just gonna be an auto because it's just a blue card that blocks for 3 and pitches for 3.
Wait until we get to later on in this episode and we talk about blue cards that block for 3.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. We'll save that for later. And then one last card I want to mention is Earthlore Bounty. I want to mention this because not because I think it's particularly good. I think looks fun and it does have that sort of Johnny potential where, oh, this card works really well with Hope Merchant's Hood. I can make 5 Seismic Surges on my opponent's turn and like get a bunch of cards. But it's a alternative to the Tectonic Plating and Final Spring Tunic. I do appreciate that a big running theme with the Majestic equipment that did get printed in the set is that they're replacements or fighting for the same slot as a lot of legendary or otherwise expensive equipment. So I feel like this is a good way for a lot of people who might not be able to afford Tectonic Plating to get something that is mostly similar or might have might be interesting enough to build around without having to shell out a lot of money. So I do appreciate them LSS for helping make the slots that aren't competitive right now be more competitive for deciding what equipment you're going to wear.
Yeah, I think one of the trickiest things with just the rarity system in Fab, right, is just that cost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so this does go somewhat to making it better. It's more of a band-aid than a true solution, right? In the sense that, if Tunic is still the best option, then while this is a replacement if you can't afford it, it's not a solution to the problem, because Fire-Dells are still, or Fire-Dells or Tech Plate or whatever it is still the best card, right? So you're kind of running a pauper deck if you're running this. I was going to say, appreciate that there are options that are not just worse, right? Yeah. So I guess the example I'll give, I know it's basic, but I look at, I recently dug out some old cards I have, and I've got a cold foil Iron Rot Helm. And right, and the problem with Iron Rod Helm is it's just flat out class so many cards, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many cards that are just strictly better than it. I don't mind when cards get printed where it's not necessarily the case that like, I mean, there might be the case where it's 80% of the time Tunic is better or something, but 20% of the time this card will be better. That's fine, right? As long as there's some reason I would play this card over the other. And Earthfall Bounty is not the same as Tech Plate, and it's not the same as Fire-Dells Tunic. It's not just an impoverished version of those. It's a different card. So yeah. I also appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely am excited to brew around some of these Majestics, just because I feel like the decks that will be brewed around them will be not only interesting, but kind of fun to play. Like Earthfall Bounty works really well with that new potion that makes you shuffle and draw. Works really well with Host Merchant's Hood. Make 5 Seismic Surge tokens, play Spinal Crush for free. So that sort of potential seems like a lot of fun, and I feel like this really helps a long way with the casual side of the game.
Yes, yeah, I would say that this is really the casual side of the game too, right? Because as an example, Kaio, I mean, who we spoke about in the brute section, Kaio feels like a very Timmy-ish deck too. Roll a bunch of dice, have a good time. If you roll high one day, you're gonna have a good time. Yeah. Right? And even if you're a casual player, you can still, swing for like 20 or whatever every third game or whatever in one hit, just because of all the combination of cards and you can't block. So yeah, it really helped to that more casual side as well.
Okay, cool.
Shall we?
Yeah, sure. Add Oliver?
No, not really.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's go to Ninja. Oliver, you play Ninja. What do you think about the Ninja cards? You played Benji when we first started.
Oh yeah.
So this is probably a great set for Benji.
Yeah, there's so many cards that support Benji now with the base cost less than 2, and then this whole theme, this whole archetype of making those 2-cost cards hit, and then searching for more 2-cost cards and just going super, super wide. I think it's really hilarious and actually going to be pretty fun, as well as Katsu being able to utilize some of these things as well, because 100 Wins, the new combo line that's been introduced, all has combo, so you can just search for it and just keep going wider and wider, and then just Winds of Eternity everything back. Yeah, I think it's a good set, and the new defense reaction is pretty decent. Very situational, but if ever Cheerios gets out of hand, we now have like a counter for it in Ninja.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is that it blocks for 5, and so it gets over the cards that get over the breakpoints for other defense reactions. I'm a little worried about the arms race in terms of like breakpoint shattering. But I guess since at 6 you kind of just get to hit another breakpoint, it doesn't really matter that much. One thing I'm maybe not so happy about this set with Ninja is that, and this is mostly a nitpick because I do think the art is amazing, but the art all blends together for me. Everything but Wax On is just some flavor of central figure surrounded by mist and or water.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I was just scrolling through and looking through them. I'm like, you're right. It's literally like Ninja. It's like Asian-ish person in elements.
Yeah.
Looking kind of mystical. That's pretty much it. As a general thing on Ninja's design, it's only just occurred to me as I'm looking through all of these cards, because I like the design of a lot of cards, the Ninja cards in this set, right? I think 100 punches, 100 wins?
100 wins.
Is a fun card, right? Like, it's just like Relentless Rats or whatever in Magic.
Yeah.
A lot of the same card has some sense of fun to it. So that's cool. And I like the idea that, I believe one of them lets you shuffle a bunch of cards in, right? If you...
Yeah, so basically the combo finisher, quote unquote, for 100 wins is shuffle every 100 wins you use this turn back into your deck.
Yeah. So you get to do it a bunch over and over again. So that's cool. Like I like, again, the theme of it of just going like with a flurry of blows is kind of cool. But one thing that I've just kind of noticed about Ninja is because of Ninja's design in the sense that there's these trees, right? You've got Mugenshi, you've got Rising Lord Leg Tap, etc. You've got these lines of attacks. And so it kind of in some ways seems like it constrains the deck building on Ninja a little bit more than other factions.
Yeah.
If that makes also other identities, because I mean, yes, you can play Leg Tap as a generic, but if you're playing, it almost feels like you have to pick combo lines and then that's your deck, right? I know that's not exactly how it works, but I'm just more talking about the general design principles. You can't be as native with some of the Ninja cards as you can with other classes because they're much more specific. It's like tribal, right? You can't be fancy with tribal decks because it says this card goes well with elves, so you play elves with it. Whereas if you have generic cards that don't mention specific other cards, then you're free to be creative. But anyway, that's a minor nitpick. I think Ninja's pretty cool to set.
Yeah, I think part of the reason for it, maybe they weren't thinking about this initially, but I do think it actually lends itself well to the game design, is that because Ninja is kind of shunted into these predictable combo lines with only like 1 or 2 branching paths, it allows the opponent who, and keep in mind, this is like coming from a perspective of like a WTR player where they're not familiar with the game yet, allows the opponent to eventually and pretty easily learn what each combo line does. And so even though they're using like 3 or 4 attacks and it's going to be hard to predict what exactly they have in your hand, like, okay, this is their maximum threat level hand that they possibly can do. And I want to avoid that. So it does help a lot in facilitating how fair it feels to play against, even though it's making like 3 or 4 to 5 attacks per turn, where you still can understand and know like when to block out and like how to block out these combos without having to rely on just blind faith that, let's hope that this Briar player doesn't have a snatch in hand.
So it's an interesting perspective, not one I've thought about, right? But I get what you're saying in the sense that Ninja is almost a good onboarding opponent, right? Like where if you play against Ninja, because they're a little bit more predictable as far as what their next attack in the line is, what their maximum potential is going to be. They're a good opponent to play against because you get used to that sequencing everything. Whereas Briar or whatever could just be like, I attack, I make 3 arcane tokens, I attack again, I make this stuff, I go do this thing, I attack with the weapon, like it's all over the shop. Whereas Ninja is a little bit more predictable. It doesn't mean it's boring necessarily. It's just that, it's not something I'd really think about for designing a card game. I think, what will make a good onboarding opponent? You know what I mean? But you are right that I think it does do that.
Yeah, I do think that the Ninja versus Warrior matchup is probably the best matchup to play if you want to learn and like get really into the next level of like fab strategy, where Warrior is really tough until you learn how to play against it, and Ninja is also really tough until you learn its combo lines. And even though I feel like both of you guys will be kind of throwing cards at each other early on, eventually some strategy will emerge where like, okay, Warrior has 1 resource and 1 card in hand. It probably has a +3 attack. Okay, Ninja's going in with Seismic Surge and has 2 Seismic or Surging Strike, right? And has 2 cards in hand. And okay, so he probably wants to complete the Lord of Wind combo line. So eventually that it's that sort of gameplay that I feel like that I really appreciate about WTR's design, where it was relatively simple, and it was simple enough that you could see the depth of the game just by playing the matchup multiple times.
Yeah, it wasn't complex, right? That's the main thing. It was. It wasn't that you needed to understand all of these intricacies about the game and the timings of everything or whatever. You just needed to cards, and then you'd learn, right? Chuck an attack, your opponent chucks an attack, they block, blah, blah, blah. You learn the basics of the game, the bread and butter. Because at its core, for me, Flesh and Blood's most interesting loop is attacking and blocking, right? It's not all of this other fancy stuff you do on the side. It's not playing 5 cards to make 3 auras, to draw 2 cards, to do all of this stuff.
Yeah, Oliver.
Don't knock at Prism or anything like that. It's just the attacking and blocking. That cool loop is the most interesting thing in the game for me, right? And so I'm happy to see these classes from Welcome to Wraith come back and for that loop to reemerge, hopefully.
Yeah.
Wait till listen.
Yeah. One other
Anyway.
card I wanted to mention, actually, before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
move on to the next set, is going to be Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. I want to mention it because I don't think other people. I think other people are rating this highly or rating this lower than I am, and I think it's. I just think it's really good. Mostly because I feel like a lot of the threat with Mask of Momentum is forcing awkward blocks to prevent you from getting caught off guard by the third Mask of Momentum hit. And I feel like with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, it just turns every attack action card into a threat that you have to like evaluate and just like block out. That I'm not sure will be healthy for the game overall. And it's actually one of my biggest concerns with Benji, where at any point, and because Benji's hard to block anyway, at any point you can just pop Mask of the Pouncing Lynx and just go into like some insane combo turn. So even though I like the design, I like that it's a very viable contender for Mask of Momentum. I'm a little concerned with the power level. I know Oliver, who actually plays Ninja, probably doesn't think that way. But this is one of the ones that I'm just like, I feel like in 3 months or 4 months, people are gonna be like, wow, Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is insane.
Okay, actually,
What do you
no,
think, Oliver?
I'm actually along that line. I think Mask of Pouncing Lynx is actually really good because it gives all your attacks on hits rather than Mask of Momentum where it's easier to play around. So Mask of Momentum will never draw you a card in some games, but Mask of the Pouncing Lynx will always at least draw you a card in some matchups.
Yeah, and even better than draw you a card, right?
Yeah.
I'm with both of you. I think I get your concern with it, Yichin, as well, like about the power level of it being potentially high. I do think that it's a tutor, right? So again, it's the kind of card where as more cards get released, there'll be they have to be much more careful, especially because this is a tutor you start the game with and can basically choose to do at any time, and it gives you a bonus card.
Yeah.
Like the upsides on it are really high. I think this is an easy contender for Mask of Momentum. It changes the flow because, again, Mask of Momentum, usually you just go, all right, so they've attacked with the first two. You either block the second, hit the third, right? And then you're all good. Whereas with this, yeah, you have to block every hit because they could just explode into something wild.
Yeah,
I like that it could enable some decks. Like I'm really secretly hoping that it enables 100 fists to be good, 100 wins to be good.
Oh yeah,
so you could tutor out more of them. But I do agree that it's a dangerous card. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future it was banned or anything like that, because it is the type of card that could be very powerful. It could just be a very good card. Like there's cards that push the power level but aren't wildly broken. But if it tipped over that edge and went from being really good to being just too much, I would be.
Yeah, absolutely. But otherwise, great art though. I like the art.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Very vibrant.
Yeah. So let's go into Warrior, our last WTR class. Warrior, actually, I know a lot of Dory players were a bit sad about this because most of the cards were geared towards the dual wielding strategy, and for a while people look at Axe Dory and think that it's just a meme build that's like was good in one specific meta but it's not really good at all. I do think that this makes Axe Dory a lot more viable, and I'm interested in hearing probably none of us, because none of us really play Warrior. But I'm interested in seeing how Warrior changes up their strategies from here on, because I feel like this is like the first major step to making Dory question her devotion to Dawnblade.
I used to play Warrior.
Oh, you did?
So,
okay, I didn't know that actually. I thought you're just on. You're always on Ranger.
That's
So-
how
I am.
top eight,
Well,
man.
oh, is that how you got top 8? Okay. Well, it makes sense because because there's no way you can top 8 as Ranger, right?
Yeah, it was limits. Well, I mean, at the time, no, because it wasn't out. I thought that was clearly what you were going for. But anyway, no. So, in fairness, it wasn't limited. That I top 8'd with Dorinthia. Briefly afterwards, I didn't play her as much because she was very popular in Welcome to Wraith, and I'm a hipster, so I played Brute because it wasn't as popular.
I see.
But there was a time, like I like Warrior. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I agree that I kind of like, again, that this set is pushing a different archetype, right? It's pushing 2-weapon fighting, basically. And that's cool. I also like a lot of the flavor cards. I think Slice and Dice is great. Like, the first swing gets a little bit better, second swing is much better. And the cool thing about that as well with Slice and Dice is that it's not strictly a 2-weapon fighting card. Obviously, it's kind of easy to pull off in 2-weapon fighting,
Mhm.
If you somehow give your weapon go again with like refraction bolters or anything like that, you will get to swing twice with it, and you will get both bonuses. So that type of design, top tier, really really good. Sure, and yeah, same deal with in the swing. If you've attacked with two or more times, once again, that is the type of thing where dual wielding obviously does it much more easily, but you can still do it with a single weapon. It's just more challenging. I'm really happy with the warrior design in this set. Actually, I didn't look at it that much beforehand, but looking through it now very briefly as well, just it's cool design. I like it.
Yeah, one thing I actually don't like about the warrior design set is Outland Skirmish, just because it feels like it's very clearly geared towards Kasai, more so
Yes.
than the Kyle cards, right? Because otherwise, like, it's basically the same thing as like Sharpened Steel, except it only works on one-handed weapons. So it feels like one of those cards that should have been a specialization and is effectively a specialization. And I guess there's
Like
some
it's
small benefit to having a copper, but I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a talent.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I agree, right? It stands out as, I don't see Dorinthia ever using that. Even if Dorinthia does use one-handed weapons, it's just, at the moment, at least, there is not enough support for copper, silver, gold for it to be worth it. In the future, perhaps, but right now it definitely seems like a Kasai specialization, like a Kasai only card.
Yeah.
I will say, I actually think probably the worst design card in this set, in this particular thing, Shatter to me is just, it doesn't seem that interesting. And it's really, really off theme in a sense where, like, it seems like they pushed two weapon fighting, right? Or swinging multiple times with a weapon in this set. And then you've just got this one card that randomly sticks out and talks about two-handed weapons. So, like, I don't mind that necessarily. It feels off compared to what the rest of the set is trying to push.
Yeah, and that's actually so. You cut out a bit there, but you actually cut out right as you were mentioning the name. But I assume you're talking about Shatter.
Shatter, yeah, that's correct.
So this is what I was going back to back when we were talking about Brute, where they clearly threw one card in the Majestic pool per class that says this is supporting the old archetype. You can use it. This is your bone. Now go away. We're gonna support this new archetype. And Shatter definitely feels like that card where it's like, this is Dawnblade will probably want to run it like as a one of, just because it might help get rid of like what was it called, Rampart of the Ram's Head or something, some other like annoying shield.
Yep.
But it's just one of those cards where it's just like, it doesn't fit with the rest of the theme of the set. Even though it is something that will help make the set sell better, because it's something that people who don't want to move off of Dawnblade want to have.
Yeah, definitely being able to go singing Spellblade into Shatter to destroy like the Illusionist boots or destroy this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Not destroy this, or destroy the Rampart, that one you were talking about before.
Yeah, it might destroy Illusionist boots if they used to block with it.
Yeah, I'm never blocking against two-hander.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get 6.
Yeah, but Rampart, I guess they don't. That's pretty much what they're going to do with it, right? They are going to block with a shield, and I suppose if you're playing against Warrior, you have to think twice. But if they don't block with a shield, well, you're kind of already ahead on that sense anyway, right?
Yeah, and also it can also just get like random effective good equipment. Like if it gets rid of, say, I don't know, tectonic plating, or I don't know, some other like Bloodsheath Skeleton, that's also totally fine. Where you just get rid of their great chess piece that they can use later on in the game for free.
Grasp of the Arc Knight.
Yeah, Grasp of the Arc Knight too.
Yeah, Grasp, all the battle war example, right? Like, yeah, blowing up tech plate, blowing up that second one. Grasp. They're definitely good options. So yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad card. It's just the design feels off compared to what the rest of the set was trying to go for.
And one rules quirk that I'm sure will catch a lot of people off guard is that Battle Worn and Temper stuff do not get the -1 counter until after the combat chain closes. So if you do 1 damage this and try to blow up their 2 defense tectonic plating, you're going to be in for a bad time.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Like, it makes sense, right? But it's just, it is definitely a rules quirk, right? It's not an edge case, but it's a finicky rule to remember, right? Because it doesn't run with what your intuition would be, right?
Yeah. It also doesn't count as a hit, which is, I think, the other issue with running with Dawnblade, where you have to choose between potentially getting a second counter and getting go again on your attack versus blowing up an equipment.
See, once again, something that didn't even occur to me. You're right, because you don't do damage, right? It's like infinitely damage.
Yeah.
And so you don't hit. Wow, that's. I mean, I feel like it should. Okay,
It should,
I,
right?
I have
I feel
thoughts
like
on
it
that.
should, but at the same time,
Yeah,
it makes sense why it doesn't.
it
But I
does.
feel like it should.
It's rules wise, it's consistent, right? Because you're saying something needs to deal damage in order for it to be considered a hit.
Mhm.
This doesn't deal damage, therefore it's not a hit. Rules consistent, totally fine. It doesn't feel like that should be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we move on? Did you have any thoughts on it, Oliver? Or mechanologist?
No. I think all the warrior cards that were introduced is really nice. I really like Blade Runner. The art of Blade Runner is actually very nice. It's kind of hints towards like a futuristic type of warrior.
I think it's Mech.
theme.
I think it's Metrics, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, like Matrix warriors, like some kind of talent associated with Matrix.
it looks like a ninja, to be honest.
Yeah, well,
Mechanologist ninja.
they're more armored than ninja.
True.
They were just inspired by Neon Dynasty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. That's what people were saying. This looks exactly like it's from Neon Dynasty.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm pretty happy with the warrior cards. They're a lot more efficient with resources. Like there's a 0 for 4 essentially. There's a 0 for 3 still, and yeah, seems
And
good.
it feels nice. It feels nice to say nice things about Flesh and Blood. I feel like it's been a while for me. What a good set.
Okay, let's talk about Mechanologist. I have a lot of stuff to say about this, but I'll kind of try and keep it short.
Yeah.
I love all the new aggro dash stuff because I feel like that archetype is the one that they wanted to make work, and it turns out that not only does it not work, but also control dash is just way better in every situation.
It turns out Pew Pew Pistol is pretty good.
Yeah.
Block, pistol, right?
Yeah, so not only did they have cards that are viable starting alternatives to Induction Chamber, but also cards that do not work well with Induction Chamber. Or rather, they don't necessarily work well with Induction Chamber. Dissolution Sphere and Signal Jammer, I feel like, are the bones that they throw to not only make sure the meta is balanced, but also to give the control player something new to toy with. But I feel like the real winner here is T-Bone, which is probably one of the best cards in the set, I want to say, just because it's a 0-cost boost and enables those, maximum velocity or magnetic shockwave turns very well. Overall, I'm super excited for all the mech cards. Happy to brew with them. Yeah, any thoughts, Kenny?
Yeah, I'm the same. So I'm excited to see the boost. Again, it's talking about those archetypes. You've got full tech mechanologist with pistol and all that, which is fine. Like I kind of wish that they used more induction chamber and the +1 to the pistol as well. You know what I mean? Like I kind of wish that the other tech cards were good enough and viable enough that they part of the deck too, or at least a large part of the deck. Again, I'm talking a while back now, so I'm sure I'm missing some context from recent things. But that's what it felt like at the time, was that those were the viable techs to play, and nothing else really was. But it's good to see Boost getting some love, and I agree. And even then, like looking at the other equipment and set, they're exciting. I also like microprocessor. I like Data Doll, but I like robots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting to see these underrepresented heroes. Well, not underrepresented heroes, but these what's the called?
The young only heroes.
What's the not classic constructed?
Blitz. The Blitz heroes.
Brawl. Yeah, the Blitz heroes. It's good to see the Blitz heroes still getting treated as though they're a real part of the story, right? And actually getting cards for them.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed for adult forms.
Mm-hmm. One thing I actually want to note about the design of the set is that they in all of their designs, they have, I want to say they softened a lot of cards that needed heavy requirements before, and they've also made committed to more potentially unfun disruption. So what I want to say here is like in both Mechanologist, I think Runeblade, a lot of the cards that they were originally designed with in Arcane Rising were very safe in that they weren't completely sure as to the success and the power of arcane damage and other like more synergistic archetypes. So they played it safe with a lot of cards like Rune Flash and like Drawn to Dark Dimension, where they're overcosted and it's a little awkward to use consistently. It feels like that after looking at the reception to Arcane Rising's heroes, where most of them were universally considered to be weaker than the WTR heroes. They looked back and saw that the requirements that the hoops that they had to jump through to get efficient attacks were a bit too much. And so a lot of these new requirements, Mech with only caring about one boost and like Runeblade only caring about one token created, are ways to help bring them back into viability and to help their original planned archetype to succeed a bit more and be a bit more consistent. The other thing I want to mention is that they're also committed to more disruption. I think I'll mention this when we get to Ranger as well, in that a lot of the original heroes, there's basically only Ranger had any sort of non-damage related disruption. A lot of them were mostly just either snowball effects or Guardian, where it was just 4 damage or more, and that was relatively forgiving in terms of not blocking all of it completely. So I'm glad to see that they are committed to giving more heroes more ways to disrupt the opponent's plans. Mechanologist is one of them with their little, I want to say, equipment removal archetype, and a couple of their specialized items that seem way more powerful than anything that was released in Arcane Rising. So yeah, anything else you want to mention, Oliver, in this Mechanologist section?
As a Ranger player, T-Bone's going to be hell to play against because we have so much Blade Break.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
I'm not. We'll see.
I know. That's why I'm looking forward to it. Okay, cool. So we have next Merchant. I don't think it's really worth mentioning, but we'll just talk about this meme class.
The only comment I really have on Merchant is I think that Silver Palms is one of the worst design cards. Is it basically does nothing unless an opponent wants it to, right?
Yeah.
Because unless they choose to. So is this supposed to be like an ultimate pit fighter thing where you do some negotiation style stuff? Like it's a weird design. Like at least with Genus, or whatever it is himself, if the opponent doesn't want to play the game, it's something, right? You still filter or something. Silver Palms just literally does nothing unless they choose to. And so it's almost it's actually weak design, right? Because the only time an opponent is going to do that is when they feel it's beneficial for them and not for you.
Yeah.
So, we're really, really weak design on that, in my opinion.
I think the main thing is that they wanted to give Merchant a 2-block arms, and they didn't want to make it too strong. I don't know. I keep on looking at this card. I'm thinking they must have done something in development that was like, this is way too strong. Let's change this to it so it's bad.
Well, they nailed that. Like, they certainly didn't make it too strong.
On the plus side, it's also one legendary that will, 1, be cheap, and 2, not punish you for not opening it. So that's a good thing, I guess.
But you got the opposite, though, right? Like, at the moment, when people open a legendary, they feel good, right? Imagine opening up a case or whatever and going, man, Palms. Like, really?
I'll tell you all about it when we open up our cases.
Yeah. But anyway, so Merchant, I have no opinions on the moment. Like, I'm sure it'll come out at some point and do something kind of cool. Thematically, I have a bit of a problem with Merchant as a class because every other class feels like a combat class, whereas Merchant's doing all of this weird money stuff. It just doesn't feel like it blends as well together. But it's fine.
Yeah, I would have much preferred if they did Alchemist instead of Merchant. But hey.
Yeah. Alchemist would have been fine, right? It could have been a similar thing. You could have been assembling potions or stuff. I believe an Alchemist being in a fight, but like with a Merchant, unless you're hiring mercenaries or something like that, and that's what the money theme is, I just can't really see it. What are you going to do, chuck coins at them?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the real treat this set. I'll let you guys kind of talk about this because I have no opinions on Ranger other than this looks sweet. So Oliver, go ahead. Let's talk about Ranger.
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, we got so many new toys. We got Dreadbore. We got Battering Bolt, which is okay in my opinion. Still nice to have. Tri-Shot, which is a non-attack action. Pitches for 3 and it blocks for 3. I thought Ranger was gonna be like stuck in this hellhole where all the non-attack actions block for 2 or something. But yeah,
illusionary. I reckon they'll later on say, look, it was actually a misprint. So it's supposed to be. It was supposed to not block at all.
Yeah. Tri-Shot goes against their design philosophy and it's gonna be banned because of game balance. Same thing that happened to Drone.
Yeah. And then continuing, we have like Rain Razors. We have Released Attention, which is 0 for 3. And it really synergizes with Dreadbore. We got Fatigue Shot, and we got Read the Glide Path. So a lot of this stuff is good for Lexi, but also really amazing for Azalea, which is very, very nice to see.
Yeah. As someone who only plays Azalea and will pretty much, I think, for the career of my Fab career, only play Azalea. This is a good set. I was gonna say, going through very quickly, I think that Release the Tension is a very, very interestingly named card that has a very, very particular look about it as well. It's just like even the art, like I was gonna say, it's a little on the nose, but it's very good. It's a very powerful card. Again, Ranger is the kind of thing where printing Tri-Shot was interesting because you've got these two very clearly divergent paths where you've got the Ranger that just wants to shoot 1,000,000 arrows per turn and just overwhelm you that way. The Ranger that's trying to set up one big shot over and over again. So that's cool. Like, again, without the use of traits. Like, I know Lexi's a whole other kettle of fish where Lexi's got your ice and your lightning and your ice lightning as well. Really, it boils down to, in classic Ranger, it's just, are you shooting a big arrow or are you shooting many small arrows? So it's good to see that support throughout the cards. Dreadbore, so I think it's quite a powerful bow. It's really fascinating design, though, because it's the kind of card. By the way, I read this first and I thought it said defense reaction cannot be played, period, to the chain link. Read the card. Then I read the card hand. I was like, oh, okay. But it's interesting because its existence makes Ranger better. Not even if you use it. But the fact of the matter is that when you sit down and you flip up the fact that you're playing Ranger, your opponent has to make a choice about whether they're going to board out defense reactions or not. Because if you're playing Dreadbore, then it's going to be much worse. But if you're not playing Dreadbore, they still had to make that call, right? And so Death Dealer, like every single bow in the game, every single Ranger class got buffed by the existence of that card. And I don't know if I like that design as a general thing. Something like this can be so sweeping in that way. I don't know if it will be, but you get what I'm saying with the general design point.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of my other concerns that I have with maybe not the game design, but just like the structure of the games themselves, is that at a certain point you're going to need specialized sideboards for various archetypes, and that may not be the same from class to class, or from hero to hero, or archetype to hero, or class to class. And so the existence of multiple archetypes is a boon for deck builders, and it's a boon for the people playing it. But it makes sideboarding a lot more of a gamble, and eventually it's going to get to this point where there's going to be like a 50-50 choice where either he's playing this archetype and I win, or he's playing this other archetype and I lose because these cards are completely ineffective. We saw that a little bit with Prism too.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing, right? Because it was similar with like Ninja in the early days, right? Because when you had like the Spaghetti Tornado Ninja, which was the fatigue style one, you'd sit down, they'd flip up Katsu, and you're like, okay, are they trying to fatigue me out, or are they going to like combo me out, right? Which one is it? And the sideboards for those two games are really different. And you're right, it's a 50-50 guess. And I don't think that's super interesting, right? Because that's not an interesting choice. I guessed right, or you haven't. And so, yeah, that part I don't love as much. And I think that cards like Dreadbore, as I said, I don't mind it existing per se, but I think the general design principle of this card existing makes everything else better, just because it's an extra decision your opponent has to make before the game even starts. Like it's not an in-game decision is the key thing. It's just like do I board out? Like maybe they don't board out defense reactions, but then they're just generally clunkier than they otherwise would be.
And see, this is the, I guess, the number one argument for having talents and having completely sectioned off archetypes, so that you don't have to deal with potential Blood Debt Rhinar or whatever, because there's only like one or two different archetypes that Rhinar can be in, or there's only one or two archetypes that Levia can be in. So I know. There's you guys are gonna say something, but still, I think this is probably what they're also thinking of, because eventually when it gets to the point where best of one becomes more of a coin flip, they're gonna need to make either some serious changes in their tournament structure or serious changes in the game structure outside of the game to facilitate having a interesting metagame while also giving people enough freedom to build what they want and play what they want. That being said, one of the other things I actually want to mention is that they are really going hard with how much that extra resource you're paying for your bow activation per arrow is getting you. Not only are you
it's
getting
big.
Yeah, not only are you getting like +1 or whatever to your weapon, but you're also getting like defense reactions can't be played. You also get, when it hits a hero, half their next attack. And
that was massive, right?
Yeah. And this is what I'm thinking this is what I was talking about where they were afraid of that sort of disruption early on, and they really played it safe with a lot of Ranger designs. And that's one of the main reasons why Ranger was so underwhelming, was that not only the arrows, but their traps too were very not punishing if you just had an extra resource or you just played around it, right?
Don't get me started on the trap.
Yeah. Honestly, I mentioned this to Oliver, where if they cost 2, at least they would be considerably playable. Like if they made you pay 2. But paying 1 is such a non-issue, especially now with Frostbite, where it's just like they clearly undershot it, and this is them correcting that and saying, okay, we understand, we need more disruption.
Yeah, and see, I said this for a while when I was playing Ranger 2, where I said the amount of setup you need for a range attack and the amount of resources it actually costs doesn't feel like it's reflected in the attacks, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're playing all of this like go again and everything. When you're trying to play like the rapid fire ranger, the amount of setup you have to pull that off doesn't feel like it's rewarded, right? And all I said was I feel like every arrow should just have +1 attack, right? Yeah. And then I feel like Ranger would be reasonable, right? And not like overwhelming, but it would actually feel scarier, right? And it would have a lot more viable options. Mm-hmm. And it only takes looking at, say, as an example, which just gives you arrow +1 attack, and obviously that's acceptable. I mean, it is instead of drawing a card like from Death Dealer, so it's not like a clear, just +1 across the board. But we saw that on the other bows as well, right? They both gave +1. They both had the potential to give +1 to their arrows.
Yeah, and another option too. The 2 options.
Exactly, right? And so, yeah, I'm happy to see the +1 strength too. And yeah, Big Shot is phenomenal. Like it's the sleep dart of this set.
Yeah, better than the sleep dart.
It's much better than the sleep dart, right? Because it's good in everything, right? Except Wizard, right? But
yeah,
in pretty much every matchup, it's gonna do something. Yep. It's just all round good arrow.
Yeah, the same thing can't be said about Timidity Point. I think that's just filler, but yeah, whatever.
I don't know what was happening there.
Yeah,
like that was just that's a bit all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll be Control Ranger. Who knows?
I think it's more for the mirror, where it's like there's a lot of dominate with Lexi and Azalea. So if that ever gets out of hand, that's like the silver bullet, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, like it's not. At least it's not worse than things, right? It's just quite narrow.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else you guys want to mention about Ranger? No,
I'm good. I'm excited to play it again, right? I'm excited to brew, so that's a good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's go talk about Runeblade, the boogeyman for 2 formats. I think it's no longer the boogeyman since it got nerfed and now everybody's complaining about Guardian. But still, people are as soon as they see 0 cost and potential 4 attack on Runeblade, they're gonna start whining. So I actually want to go into Runeblade because I didn't think they would be able to support a archetype for Runeblade that would not be super overwhelming for either OTK or the aggro Runeblade that Briar and Chain represent. But I think they did with their new designs for the commons. I feel like all of these, not only does it synergize relatively well with most of the existing Runeblade heroes, they do so in a way that feels like it's a lot more fair and it can be potentially used, but nothing that seems particularly broken for any particular hero just yet. I think that's a perfect place to be in. I don't think that Runeblade got better with his set, but I do like that they have new options. And yeah, I'm pretty excited for Runeblade. They got a new 7 attack card that should be good into Prism. Oliver is probably crying.
How can you say that and then say that Runeblade did not get better? They obviously did get better.
Well, it got better against you, but that's not. They need to be better against you. Otherwise, they would be the second best class in the game. That's unacceptable.
They're already pretty good. But okay, keep going.
Yeah. Anything you want to mention, Kenny?
No, I agree. So, I mean, this is like a whole new archetype in one set, right? or archetype. Sorry, I think you think archetype, but whatever. Yeah, it's just it's cool. I will say I absolutely abhor the text box on Swarming Gloomvale. That is probably one of the ugliest text boxes of all time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't mind it. Like I think it's pretty good. Again, I like that they took existing mechanisms, right? The creation of auras, and they made it into a theme that is just different, right? And it doesn't seem like Runeblade's necessarily going to get better, right? Like it's not like these were just flat power level increases. It's horizontal rather than vertical. It's not like existing archetypes getting better. It's a new archetype or whatever. I feel like I'm going to switch between archetype and archetype. It's just one of those words for me.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with it. Runeblade, I think, is a cool Runeblade is a thematically cool class that I have gripes with only because it's been so competitively dominant. But it's I don't have a problem with any of the card designs here.
Yeah, and I will say that I think a lot of the issue with Runeblade is that it's a talented class that functions that doesn't mention that isn't restricted to just their talent pool in terms of viable options, whereas all the other talent classes are kind of pigeonholed into using the talented cards. So I think that's a lot of the reason why they're so powerful. And so hopefully in the future we see less of that and more, if we, when we get more talents, we see more narrow archetypes with a couple of broad cards for support for older heroes. So yeah, I am excited for Runeblood Incantation. I don't think it's better than other options for like OTK Viserai or anything. I just think it's a very efficient card that helps power out this created a token this turn archetype, and I'm pretty excited to brew this, which should be like some sort of mid-rangey, just mid-range Viserai that seems to be emerging from this. One thing I want to say though is that Runeblood and Ranger are the only two classes in this set, or I guess Illusionist too. They're the only three classes in the set that don't have a Blitz counterpart, and as a result, their support cards are mostly broad. Illusionist got its own archetype, but Runeblade and Ranger, they don't feel like that they're building towards anything. They feel like that they're either making up for lost ground or helping to flesh out an archetype that they originally wanted people to play. Okay. Well, let's go on to Wizard. Any thoughts, Oliver? Any thoughts, Kenny?
I mean, it's cool. I mean, I like that they're clearly trying to push again the whole like, hey, playing cards during your opponent's turn is what you're trying to do. Most of the cards in the set give you some kind of reward for playing it during your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's cool. Again, it almost feels like what you were just saying there, a compensation, right? Like this feels like what they were trying to go for originally, where playing cards during your opponent's turn was what you wanted to do, but the cards weren't pushed enough. So they're trying to push them a little bit more.
Yeah.
That might be anyway.
Yeah, and one other thing I think they're trying to do, especially with the Majestics, is that they're pushing Wizard to be, I want to say more deep, because I want to say Wizard's relatively deep because of all its like combo lines, but it's pushing Wizards to be less linear to play against, where it's not just raw damage, but they actually have like tricks that they can do to disrupt their opponent's turn and block out some stuff and potentially play the defense while they get in some chip damage. So Sigil Parapets and Scour are the ones I'm looking at, and I think both of those lend themselves well to a more controlling / tricky wizard than we've seen before, which is just Kano blasting people in the face. Not much to say, honestly. I want to say, though, that the art for Wizard in this set is really good. I'm one of those people who likes the out there and like abstract arts, and Pry and Timekeeper's Whim are just like perfectly up my alley in terms of weirdness.
Oh yeah, Timekeeper's Whim is great. It's like it's bizarre, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I vaguely know what it's depicting, and it reminds me a lot about Salvador Dali, but I can't quite say what it actually is, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, cool.
One other thing I want to mention about Pry is that for the longest time, I thought that the hand reaching down looked like some weird abstract nonsense. And I look closer at the art and it's just some old person's hand, so. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's about it for Wizard. Let's move on to Illusionist. Oliver, what do you think about Illusionist?
It's pretty good. So when factor replication was announced, I thought that it was kind of pushing the envelope of the power level of the set. It can get really crazy in the mirror because it just counts every single card on the combat chain. They did what's it called? Clarify the exact ruling on losing Phantasm or something. So it only copies the card's based abilities. So if you have a card that loses Phantasm, then it won't copy the loss of Phantasm. It will have Phantasm, etc. But yeah, having a potential 0 for 5 dominate, draw 2 cards, or a 0 for 7 is just crazy in my opinion. But overall, I think they did successfully introduce a new archetype for Illusionist with the new auras, which aren't instant. They're actually are actions and actually cost an action point to play. And
I know,
the rest
bizarre.
of the... Oh yeah,
Illusionist having to spend action.
right? Yeah. But with seeing these blue auras and everything, it gives me hope that there is actually a use for Iris of Reality.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for Iris of Reality for this set. The question is though, and I'm not, and it's been in the back of my mind for just like randomly thinking about the brews for this, is that how are you applying pressure without Luminaris' Go Again?
Spears of Reality, or you have just pump and pump, hope something hits, or if they pop it, they have footsteps as backup.
Oh, I see. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. So you either have like a really big on hit effect, so like you do a Veiled Intentions CNC, right? And if they pop it, you get to draw a card and you get to have
Go Again.
Yeah, Go Again, or like gain an action point for your boots, etc.
Yeah.
So there is also, they introduced 2 new archetypes actually, because one of the auras makes your attacks lose Phantasm. You actually have Aggro Herald viable as well, so which is nice.
Yeah.
I still feel like Luminaris has probably pushed the envelope a little bit too much as far as a weapon.
Yeah.
It was spoiled. I saw the first weapon, right? The whatever it's called, the four attack Go Again thing. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. It's expensive, but it's good. Mm-hmm. And then I saw Luminaris and I was like, why would I ever play this? Like,
yeah, this does do a lot to help. I won't say restore my faith, but it does help help me appreciate LSS's design chops, where I could not imagine like certain weapons being viable options when they were first spoiled, and not just Iris and Luminaris, but like even Sledge of Amelheim. I couldn't just imagine that being viable. Mm-hmm. And then I see these new cards, I'm like, oh, okay, oh, cool, that makes sense now. Yeah. Other than that, not much to say. I guess I'm a little disappointed because some of the art is not as sweet as I expected. That being said, Illusionist still has the sweetest art in the game, so I don't think that I just had very, very high expectations for Illusionist art. Stuff like Passing Mirage and like Shimmers of Silver just looks absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure will look great in foil. So happy to see that at least even if it ends up lining binders, it'll be a very pretty binder.
So do we want to do generic quickly?
Yeah, let's do that. I don't think there's too much to talk about generics, honestly.
No, I don't.
Yeah, we have Bingo, which is a meme. We have Fire Breathing, which is, I guess it's an attack. It's nice. I guess. We have
meta reference, right?
Yeah, magic reference. And then we have like 12 copper and silver and item archetype cards that will be fun to brew around with, but I don't think are any good. And was it 20 items? 18 items. 18 items.
Which are just bizarre, right? Like it's the in the set they seem very narrow, right? Like, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? They almost feel like sideboard cards in that sense. The suite of 1-cost artifacts that do something in Magic, right? That they're good in this particular matchup, but
I can't see many of them.
Feels like 90% of them.
Yeah, I can't see many of them being used. There are some that are great, like Potion of Luck, Potion of Deja Vu, but other ones I just can't see using. I mean, it's pack filler, I guess. Maybe a bit disappointing to open up as a cold foil. I do like that they exist because they represent the lower bound of items, I guess. The lower bound of power level. And they have good art. I will use a lot of this for my D&D campaign.
Yeah. Good tangential things.
Yeah. All right, I think that's about it for the set. Anything you guys want to talk about as the set overall, or anything we missed?
I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, apart from the fact that I think that overall is, as I said, and I've said multiple times now, a return to form. Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm excited. First time in what feels like 6-7 months that I've been excited to look at Flesh and Blood cards.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll get some more gameplay, I guess, of the new set soon, so you guys can look forward to that. I do want to have a small series of testing random brews for the Blitz heroes at double life and three playsets. So playing them as CC heroes, I kind of want to do that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how the meta changes. People are anticipating Guardian and Prism. I don't think I agree with that necessarily. I think Guardian's pretty good in a good spot. I don't think it'll be. I don't think Bravo or Bravo New Bravo will be that overwhelmingly powerful. I think we'll have a healthy meta. In about 2 months, I might be regretting these words, so we'll see.
Yeah, my guess is going to be Guardian or Runeblade.
Yeah, that's only because Oliver doesn't want to play the Prism Mirror, by the way. So
yeah,
for those of you who want to play Prism anyway. Don't let Oliver dissuade you. He just doesn't want to play the mirror.
Oh, thanks for coming, or
thanks for watching.
What? Listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening. That's right. That's right. All right, cool.
Tuning in. Use the general one.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.